Vegan and plant-based women typically sabotage their own progress at very specific points in their journey. And I'm going to share with you exactly what they are so you can see it, so you can spot it, and so you can sort it. If you're English, you know where that comes from. But it's not the moment that you order a takeaway. Yeah, it's not the moment that you skip the gym or eat past full and say, screw it on a Friday night. They are just symptoms, right? The bit that shows up on the outside where someone else probably could actually notice it and catch it for you. The actual moment happens days, sometimes weeks before the action. And of course, it's quiet. So you don't even register that you're making that decision against your goals at the time. And it can pretty much look like this. So you'll be doing well on your journey, genuinely going really well. The weight's probably moving, your energy's better, you've caught yourself standing, maybe a little bit taller in the mirror without maybe even meaning to. And then suddenly, for no reason, you started adding tiny exceptions. A slight bigger portion here, a dessert there. Maybe I'll skip prepping my meals on a Sunday night. And that tiny action isn't just that one action. It's not just once, but it's also nothing huge that you will intentionally think, oh, this is what is causing me to fall off track. So you might even flag it, think that if someone asked you how your week went, you wouldn't even think about it. And then maybe a fortnight later, you look up and you're back where you started. And you genuinely can't understand or explain how you got there because there wasn't a particular trigger that led you to a series of actions. And so if you've lived that, you'll probably blame willpower, or you'll probably think that you must not want it bad enough. Look, it is not that you lack willpower, or at least we can't continue to blame a finite resource every single time if you want to achieve big goals. If you want to achieve big goals, willpower will never haul you through. So we need to let go of the fact that, or the idea that willpower is going to pull us through these big, big goals and big, big changes, because it's not. And we need to rely on something else. And at this stage, it's not even a discipline problem either. And I know your brain wants to go immediately to this. So what's wrong with me then? So I want to answer that because there is obviously a very real reason behind it. And it's called self-verification. So it's this self-verification theory is developed by a social psychologist called William Swan back in like the 80s. And what his research found was across decades of follow-up studies since is that we're wired to seek consistency first ahead of almost everything, including the outcomes that we say that we want. So your brain's main job ahead of happiness, ahead of health, ahead of the goal that you have up on your vision board is to keep your outside world matching your inside belief about who you believe that you are. So that's the whole premise underneath most of what self-sabotage is actually coming from, what it looks like. And when your results start pulling ahead of your self-concept, when your body starts changing faster than your identity, faster than the person that you believe that you are, that has to catch up with your physical presence, what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. Well, your nervous system, it doesn't really experience that as a positive thing. It experiences this disconnect as a threat because there is now a gap that opens up between what you believe about yourself, what you believe about your capacities, your abilities, your capabilities, who you think that you are, and what's actually happening. And your brain hates that gap far more than it actually hates staying exactly where you always have been, even if that's sick and miserable and uncomfortable and overweight, even if that's making you even sicker. So what happens then is our subconscious will work really hard to close that gap. And this doesn't look like this huge dramatic act of rebellion, but with many hundreds of minuscule tiny correctional behaviors that will bring you back to the version of you that your beliefs already agree with. So this is consistently what gets missed in other diet programs in the weight loss industry, because they tell you what to eat and when to eat, but they don't necessarily talk about the way that our subconscious and our conscious are aligning and misaligning, and the fact that as human beings, our brains are wired to keep us in line. And so when you are out of line, when you have an identity of this person and you're acting as this person, now it's out of line. So your subconscious will always do things to bring you back. So we constantly think that we lack willpower and we lack discipline, and we put it down to those things, but it's actually not. Quite a lot of the time, it's a misalignment. This misalignment is your subconscious doing good. It's protecting you. It might not seem it, and I know that it sounds ironic, but it's protecting you from the coherence of who you think that you are, because a mismatched identity, it's more dangerous to a human brain than staying stuck, because your brain is like a golden retriever and it will play fetch, and it brings you evidence that your beliefs are true. And when the evidence stops matching the truth, it doesn't just sit there and say, oh, there must be a change. It continues to go and seek new evidence instead. And it is remarkably, almost impressively creative about how it goes and seeks that evidence. So I want to give you some examples. This could look like, right, you're doing really well on your diet, you're losing weight, you're getting compliments, and then suddenly you decide, actually now is not the week, right? Maybe it's a friend's birthday, so now is not the week to be on this diet. Or even more low key, like, oh, I've got a stressful email, or the weather's shitty, it's bad news, it's getting dark. All of these are suddenly the reasons as to why we are going to act in alignment with who we were, right? It's that disjointed, oh crap, something's changed, so let's just go back to normal. Let's throw up any excuses, any reasons for us to act as we used to. And so that looks like procrastinating. You could reorganize your entire fridge and cupboards instead of actually prepping the food that's, sitting inside them. And it looks like maybe buying the healthier versions of the exact foods that you were trying to move away from, maybe trying to find healthy versions of a burger or something like that, right? Telling yourself that that's progress when really it's kind of the same underlying behavior. Maybe you swap a snack that you don't actually need, right? You're not hungry for a snack, but you want a snack. So instead of taking that snack away and working on the emotional reasons as to why you're going for that food, you just swap it with a healthier version. It looks like reading one more book, watching one more video, joining one more free challenge, because gathering information feels like you're moving forward, gathering what you need without ever actually requiring you to risk actually becoming the version of you that you want. That feels safe, right? It feels safe. But hang on a minute, does that actually get us to our goals? No. The real identity shift is actually doing the thing consistently, not learning about the thing, just doing the thing. And so it looks like being fully compliant Monday to Thursday, and then maybe treating yourself at the weekends, setting a different rules because it's someone's wedding or because it's the weekend. Almost as though that your body recalibrates its needs depending on the day of the calendar, the day printed on your diary. That's obviously not how it works, but we will tell ourselves that. And then there's another important layer underneath all of this, okay? So you've got the fear underneath the fear, because it's not only just, I don't believe I deserve this for a lot of women. Underneath that, there's something that sounds like, well, what happens if I actually succeed? And it still isn't enough, right? We have this, they call it the hedonic treadmill, where nothing is ever going to be enough. You reach your goal, you reach it, but it's never enough. You lose your weight, but now I've got saggy skin. I lose my weight, but now I'm 10 years older. I lose my weight, but now I'm not in a place where I could maybe go out and find a partner, or maybe now I'm in a place where I have to care for someone. And it's almost like we are stuck on this treadmill, running and chasing after something that we will never actually reach. And Brene Brown talks about visibility and shame. And she argues that being seen is often more frightening than staying hidden for some women, because visibility means there's now something that you have to lose, something people can watch you fail at publicly, or worse, watch you maybe even achieve. And then they judge you because you've achieved, because you've succeeded, because you've got money, because you've got wealth and health and relationships and body, right? And still not quite good enough. It's still not quite the transformation that you expected. So staying stuck is uncomfortable in the moment, but it's actually a known contained discomfort, right? So staying uncomfortable is comfortable in a paradoxical way, because you know better the devil you know, right? You know what that feels like. Whereas you don't know what eating whole plant food meals every single day feels like. Right now, you might think that it feels like a lot of effort and a lot of energy. Being vegan, 100% vegan, might feel difficult. You might think that it's difficult. So you would rather stay in the discomfort of knowing that you have pre-diabetes, or that you have insulin resistance, or that you just have weight gain that isn't shifting, or maybe you've got a lot of excess body fat around your stomach since you've gone through menopause. That discomfort of where you are now might seem lesser discomfort than what you actually don't know or have never seen and experienced. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, being vegan is not difficult at all. It is not hard to cook home cooked meals every single day. I don't cook every single day, but it's not difficult. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And you might look at me and say, oh yeah, but it's easy for you. It wasn't when I started. Everyone has a learning curve. Everyone has a learning curve with anything brand new that they have to do, right? So you have these parameters of what you know that they're already preset for you, right? So succeeding and being seen and risking that still doesn't fix the deeper thing that you actually wanted to be fixed. And that's a much bigger, much less contained fear. So some part of you keeps things maybe small enough that you never have to actually test this out. Like one of my clients, Bryony. Bryony is an older client of mine. She had a super demanding job, jam-packed social calendar. She worked out most days, and typically on paper, she seemed to be doing everything right, but she'd stuck at the exact same weight for over 5 years. She was chronically bloated, and by the end of most days, regardless of what she'd eaten, she was still exhausted despite napping for an hour every afternoon. So she'd spent 5 months getting medical exams and tests done because she believed she had something wrong with her. She believed that her struggles was just part of her, and that it was nothing to do with her lifestyle, because other people lived a very similar lifestyle. It couldn't be that, it had to be her. So she used to even call herself the queen of internalized stress. She didn't think that she was stressed. She thought she coped well with a busy life, but weekends would come about and everything that she'd done well Monday to Friday went out the window. And that allowed Monday morning to constantly be the restart that she needed. And so Bryony's belief underneath all of these actions was, something is wrong with me. So no meal plan, no amount of Slimming World lessons or diet pills were actually going to fix this cold hard belief that she was broken or that she was exempt. Every week she would take the Friday night slip-ups as evidence that she couldn't continue. She'd slip and she'd spiral, because that's what beliefs are. They are the anchor, and your brain goes out to try and find evidence that that belief is true, always. So she would see this one slip up on a Friday, and rightly so she would slip up because she would be so restrictive. And now her brain sees that one tiny piece of evidence as why she couldn't make it, because she believed that she was broken. Now, we often see this on a day-to-day basis. I want you to think of the last time that you got complimented. You could probably get complimented once a day, but only think about the times that you weren't complimented, or think about the things that someone said that were negative. There's a viral reel that I've seen recently. They dropped one like Smartie into a glass container, and that was the negative comment. And then they dropped these Smarties into another container, and it was positive, 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 until there was one Smartie in one container and the other container was completely full. They showed this person picking it up and looking at that one negative comment, that one Smartie in that container, and then they just dropped that whole container of positive Smarties to focus on that one negative one, right? So your brain will continue, it will latch onto that one thing that proves that your belief is true, and it will ignore all of the evidence. This is called your reticular activation system, and it is intentionally designed to go out and collect all of that information to believe that your belief is true. With Bryony, we didn't start with restriction, because more restriction was exactly what she'd already tried, exactly what wasn't working anyway. We started with catching the pattern itself. And so over 6 months, her cycle began to regulate properly for the first time in years. She broke a 5-year plateau. She lost over 10 pounds, and she stopped needing to nap most afternoons, which is a bloody miracle because she slept every single day for an hour. She stopped asking what is wrong with me, and she started, in her own words, feeling like a normal human being again. So she started to realize that it wasn't this belief that she was broken. That's just what she thought was true. But what you think is true and what is actually true are two different things. So I want to contrast Bryony's lived experience with a client of mine called Lizzie. So Lizzie trained in the gym. She trained hard. She trained harder than I do. She trained 7 times a week. She was navigating perimenopause on top of everything else, like a busy, chaotic family. I think she had like 3 boys. That's a lot of chaos, right? That's a lot of chaos and a lot of kudos. I'd tip my hat off to her. I could never do it. But she was gaining a lot of excess fat around her stomach and her thighs, despite training hard, despite being busy, and it was not budging. So she'd tried plant-based for years already, but she had so much overthinking baked into every meal, every day, what she was doing. She was constantly second-guessing herself, thinking about, am I getting enough protein, about food timing, about whether that she was doing it properly and perfectly, that eating had ended up becoming this huge source of anxiety rather than an opportunity to nourish herself. What's important for you to know about Lizzie's story is that she had a strong inner critic and perfectionistic tendencies. And underneath all of that sat this shame loop that sounds like, I should know this by now. And she wasn't lacking discipline. My God, if anything, she had more discipline and willpower than anyone I've ever worked with, than far beyond myself. But Lizzie was stuck in old weight loss systems, old weight loss mentality, old rules that were built entirely on relying on willpower rather than actual understanding of what was going on in her mind, in her belief system, and in her new body that she has, right? She was going through changes and shifts. She has a new body now, and we need to learn how to navigate that new body. So her belief that was limiting her progress, underlying it, which we found out, was, if I'm not doing this perfectly, I'm failing. And failing is proof I was never actually capable of this in the first place. So her nervous system protected that belief like it was her child. And that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to protect it at all costs. And unlike Bryony, instead of dropping the ball at the weekends, she started to steer towards heavier restriction, more rules, more rigid control, because the idea of being more flexible and less rigid triggered her nervous system into believing that she'd completely lose it and gain more and more weight back on. So the reason why I'm sharing these client stories with you is so you can see how having a belief system can lead to these specific self-sabotaging behaviors. Now, I call self-sabotage self-protection because it's not a way to sabotage. You know, we say it as if our brain is out to get us, but your brain is out to protect you. And when we stopped blaming ourselves, and because when we think about, I want you to think about self-sabotage for a moment. When you think about it, what kind of feelings does it evoke? Typically for people, they think straight away of something that's negative, something that's not enjoyable and annoying, and something that's maybe a hurdle or a pain in the ass. But when you think about self-protection, we have a much more positive outlook on it. And you can change something that's when it's positive far easier than when it's a negative thing. So Bryony believed that she was broken. So no matter how hard she was going to try, she was bound to lose. the first sniff of things going wrong, which was actually a natural reaction to her restriction, her over restriction, her brain would offer up that this was evidence and say, see, we might as well quit now. Then there's Lizzie, who believed that perfectionism is the only way to conquer my goals. And she would wait back, she would gather data, she would learn more, hold back until she found the perfect meal plan, had the perfect streak to celebrate her successes, or not even try, because perfectionism requires effort, more effort than she already had in the tank. So why bother trying? So what actually shifted things for her wasn't more structure. Of course, she had more structure than most people I know. It was learning how to trust her own body's cues, her signals, after years of overriding them, working through nervous system regulation properly, rather than struggling to try and self-protect from her own self-imposed rules. And slowly and carefully, she was rebuilding that trust through noticing small pieces of evidence that she was actually winning and actually succeeding, and creating safety in imperfect action as well. And so over time, she went from feeling anxious and self-critical around every single meal and decision that she was making to just saying and describing herself as someone who trusts herself, someone who's stopped second guessing all the time, stopped second guessing every decision at the table around food, around her life. And I want you to hear me when I say this, ladies. Neither of these women needed someone to tell them what to eat, right? Some of you want that, but it's not the thing that's going to create the consistency that you desire. We know this because most of you are running around with meal plans and recipes coming out of your ears, right? Bryony already knew what to eat. She'd been vegan for 10 years. Lizzie had been vegan for a long time as well, but she also had more nutrition knowledge than most coaches I know. What both of them thought they needed was weight loss, right? That's what they wanted. What they both actually needed was someone to spot the patterns with them while it was happening, not maybe 3 weeks later, once they had fallen off track and were back at square one, where they were angry with themselves and wondering how they'd got back there again. And this, my lovely, this is the missing piece for a lot of you that are listening to this. And I say this with real love. You are probably very good at understanding your patterns after you've taken the action, right? After you have done the overeat, done the spiral, done the binge eat, gone rogue and been inconsistent, you know where your patterns are. You can look back at a month and roughly tell me what happened and where things broke down. You could probably tell me what you ate that threw you into a spiral or threw you off the plan. That's not the problem, and it's never the problem, right? It's what diet programs and weight loss pills and injections and products, they want you to think that that's a problem, because if you continue believing it's a you problem, then you'll keep buying the goods. What most women do struggle with is understanding the beliefs that are driving those actions or the inaction. Because the action can be different. The excuses in your mind, they can sound different. They can sound real, right? A real life reason. Like, well, I ran out of time, or it's a friend's birthday, or it was too hot. All of these things, they sound real and they sound realistic. But whether you've got a belief that it has to be perfect to win, and that reminds me of childhood, or maybe you've got a belief that you're fundamentally broken, or you've got a belief that, well, my family are big boned, so, I'm always going to be big. Whatever that belief is, if it is a belief that you will not succeed, then failure is inevitable. And what's much, much harder is catching this belief in action, because again, in the moment that you take the action that aligns you back with your old belief system, your old identity, that doesn't feel like sabotage. That sabotage is egged on by your belief system, but it feels reasonable. It's a small, tiny, one-off decision. It feels maybe like admiral discipline, right? I'm going to overly commit myself and do this because it makes me a good person. Or it can come from fear, right? It can come from that fear of failure, fear of success. Now, if you leave this pattern unaddressed, the cost isn't only the weight staying exactly where you are or even increasing. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about how your body doesn't just carry your beliefs psychologically, it carries them physiologically. So it carries that in your stress hormones, in inflammation, in how your nervous system regulates or fails to regulate day after day for years on end. So think of Bryony's chronic bleeding, her 5 months of thyroid testing, her constant fatigue. None of that was separate. It was the undercurrent of her belief system. Her body was running that saying, something's wrong, let's brace, let's protect, let's keep rinsing and recycling the pattern. This is a continuous loop. And Lizzie, she had migraines, she had really shit sleep, she had constant food anxiety. That was her body carrying that physical weight of spending years in that fight or flight mode over something as menial as a meal. So the real cost of staying in your pattern isn't just maybe another couple of years, another 5 years, another 10 years, the number on the scale staying the same or increasing. That is also chipping away at your health while your body continues to carry this burden of you not changing your belief system. So because with every new diet, every next time you start, you're solidifying that belief system that you are broken, that you're doomed to fail, that you're not enough, that you're not worthy, that it is hard. Now, I know most of you will want me to give you more information, to tell you exactly what to work on. And I could absolutely give you the steps, but how many of you will be able to find the underlying beliefs? How many of you will be able to spot your beliefs from the truth? And I say this with love, because if this was all it took, information wasn't your problem. And if information is not your problem, you have a belief system running the show. But here's the problem. All belief systems feel true until they're proven. So yes, I'm going to give you some steps and some things that you can be aware of and some actions to take. But underlying that is going to be something that feels true, that is driving your actions. So what breaks this belief system is catching the pattern earlier and earlier each time it comes up until eventually you catch it before that small exception even happens, rather than 3 weeks after that you've already done it and you're back inside this loop and you're restarting the diet program that you're on. So there are 3 specific catch points I want you to walk away with, because I think maybe a framework you can actually use in your week to week is probably worth a little bit more than just me explaining how it works. So the first point is noticing the language and the verbiage that you're using. I want you to actually listen to what you're telling yourself in the moments right before you make the small exception or take the action. It's not going to sound huge. It's not going to be like crazy bad or negative. It probably sounds super reasonable, like, oh, just this once. It won't hurt. I'll get back to it tomorrow. Well, I've had a hard week. I deserve this. I can't afford to slip even that slightly. If I loosen even just a little bit, I'll lose control. So see what I mean? These sentences, these belief systems, they sound so reasonable, but until you have someone to question your belief system and disprove it and show you how it could also be something different, you are going to cling to that, right? So yes, I'm going to give you these steps, but it is so normal to experience difficulty in being able to pinpoint these yourself. Some of you will be able to find them. Some of you won't. So the moment you hear these voices, I want you to notice that this is your pattern walking in like a big freaking red flag. So the second catch point is the timing, right? Ask yourself if this is a one-off, is it an exception? Are you rigid and being very structured with your weight loss plan? Is it showing up in direct response to something that's happened in your day, in your life, a response to a particular person? Is it on time? Is it on schedule? What is the pattern, right? Is it coming up at the same time every week, same time every day, same point in your progress? regardless of what's actually going on around you. So Bryony's pattern was every single weekend, which told us clearly that it wasn't circumstantial. These restrictions showed up anytime she got close to that plateau, right? It was a pattern that kept coming up. So the third catch point is a pre-decision. This is deciding in advance before you're standing in the moment, right? Like when you've got the head in the fridge, that moment just before that you decide, I'm going to go and grab a chocolate bar from the vending machine, or you pre-decide this is going to be a healthy, good weekend. Again, they sound so reasonable. And some of you might be like, well, what's the problem with thinking ahead and planning? But if your pattern is over restriction, then that is the problem. So you don't necessarily need more willpower for these 3 points, these 3 action steps that you can take. You just need some awareness, and know that it's okay if you cannot fully see your own blind spots. That is normal. Even coaches hire coaches to find their blind spots. So as a gift to you guys, for my birthday month, I am offering a handful of extra one-to-one sessions when you jump on my program, Her Rise, this month. Because the entire point of them is closing that gap between understanding what is happening, which most of you listening, you can already do. You already know exactly where things are breaking down, but also having someone to catch it and pull it apart with you before you make that spiral. And this is often where a lot of people will struggle, because they will struggle to see what beliefs are driving the actions, where it's coming from. We think about the actions as the surface level actions, as the real problem, but underneath that is a reason why that is there. And it's the reason why that action is taking place that is the thing that actually needs to be fixed. I want you to think about your problem as like a weed, right? Underneath that weed, if you just keep cutting that weed off, right? And think about that weed like your weight gain, inflammation, insulin resistance, right? That is not the root of the problem. The root of the problem is underneath that. It is deeply ingrained and deeply embedded. Now, if you just try and chop that off, if you take a pill for insulin resistance or follow an insulin resistance protocol, or if you just blame menopause, or if you think that just taking HRT is going to help, right? If you do these things that are cutting off the weed, it's not pulling out the root. The root is still there. The underlying reasons are still there. And the problem is we are all sold that the weed is the problem. The weed is never the problem. It's the roots that have grown into the ground that's the problem. So you want to rip your problems out by the root. Now, if you've been umming and ahhing about working with me properly, this is a great opportunity for you to steal more of my time than just jumping in with group coaching. If you want to get on a call with me first, we can take an honest look at where you're at, what your goals are, and I'll honestly let you know if I think that you're a good fit, because this offer is built specifically for those women who have some shit to shuffle. I always tell my clients, bring your shit for me to shuffle to our next coaching call. So this birthday offer is next level one-to-one, closer support than ever to really, really get you working through your personal history. Because if diets don't work for you, then food was never your problem in the first place. Just trying to lose weight with another diet and meal plan is not going to fix a belief system that is anchored in your inability to succeed, right? And this belief system that you have an inability to succeed is absolute BS. So I want to help you work through that, help you see how your belief system is probably not true, and show you exactly how to work with that. So if you're keen, comment birthday. We will book you in for a triage call. We will map out what your goals are, what's getting in your way, what's really getting in your way, and we can figure out exactly how to interrupt those patterns long before they ever become the shit, how did I get here moment. One more thing, you were never broken. You were never lacking discipline or willpower. You were proving your beliefs right. If you believe you can fly, it makes sense to try and fly. If you believe that you will fail, it makes no sense to try at all. So change the belief, catch the pattern earlier, and watch just how much faster the results start flooding in, because you'll finally be working with your own nervous system, with your body, with your belief system, instead of fighting against it every single freaking week. I hope this has landed. I hope this has been helpful. And don't forget to comment birthday. If you're listening to this on podcast, make sure you pop over to my socials and message me the word birthday in the month of July, the year of 2026. And we'll set you up with a triage call. If you're outside this time, we might be able to see if there's something that we can do for you. So take care, and I will see you next week.